In Proverbs 15, verses 1 through 16, we find contrasts between the righteous and the wicked, the wise and the fool, the harsh and the gentle, and the joyful and the sad. And the counsel I want us to focus on today is to live like the Lord is looking. In verse 3, he says, "The eyes of the Lord are in every place, watching the evil and the good." And in verse 11, he says, "Sheol and Abaddon lie open before the Lord. How much more the hearts of men?" God sees everything. He even sees into Sheol and Abaddon, the realm of the dead and the place of destruction that are a complete mystery to us because we've never seen beyond the grave. And just as God can see those things, so too can he see into our hearts, and he can see every interaction we have with our fellow human beings. And if we'll live in light of the fact that the Lord is looking at everything we say and do, it'll motivate us to stay far away from evil and to be pleasing to our Father. You've got the negative aspect of this, where it's kind of scary to feel like we're being watched by God, because it means we can't get away with any kind of evil without being caught. It's like when you're a kid and you think you can get away with stuff as long as your parents can't see you. But as soon as you find out that one of your parents saw what you did, it's terrifying because you know now you're in trouble. But then there's a positive aspect to know that your parents are watching. Like maybe they're at a sporting event or a performance of yours and your parents are out in the audience and you know they're looking at you. That motivates you to want to make them proud, and you know that they're there because they love you and they're watching you because they support you and they're cheering you on. Now, if we run today's reading through the grid of the Lord looking at all that we do, it adds an extra note of motivation. So in verse 1, he's watching the way we speak to one another, and we need to make sure we're not using harsh words to stir up anger and wrath. Sometimes it's not just what we say, but the way we say it that makes all the difference. In fact, the tongue of the wise makes knowledge acceptable. Wise people know sometimes we have to say hard things and people aren't going to want to hear it, but there's a way to make it more palatable, like having a calmer tone or starting by complimenting the person or expressing our love and concern for them. Whereas fools just go around correcting people and telling them how much they have to learn. For the wise, our words are like a tree of life, and when people eat from the fruit of our lips, it builds them up and helps them flourish. Whereas fools crush people with their words, and the Lord is watching all of these interactions. He sees when we have good interactions, and he sees when we have evil interactions, and we should be motivated to please him in all of our conversations. Likewise, we should want to please God by accepting reproof and discipline. A fool rejects his father's discipline in verse 5, and he says something similar in verse 10. He who hates reproof will die. And in verse 12, a scoffer does not love one who reproves him. He will not go to the wise. If we know the Lord is looking and he's watching how we live, we should want to receive correction from others so that we can be more pleasing to our Father who sees everything that we're saying and doing. And because God sees the things that we do, he rewards the righteous in verse 6, and he allows the wicked to reap trouble. We should want to help people in verse 7 by spreading knowledge and sharing things that can help people flourish spiritually. But fools don't do that. And we should know in verse 8 that because God is looking and he sees everything, even our hearts, that means we cannot just bring him a sacrifice as some empty ritual, but not actually give him our heart. We can't live however we want, but then bring God a sacrifice thinking that that makes it okay. No, he sees exactly what we're doing. He doesn't just see what we do in worship on Sunday. He sees how we're living throughout the week. And if it's inconsistent with what we're doing on Sunday, then our sacrifice is an abomination. But really, his delight is when you have an upright heart and you're serving him sincerely and you're pursuing righteousness, verse 9. And the Lord has designed us to get joy from wisdom and joy from pleasing our Father who is watching everything that we do. And when we have joy, verse 13, you can see it on our face. When you know you're you're right with God and you're pleasing the Lord who is looking at everything you say and do, it makes a difference in the way you carry yourself. And likewise, when you're sad, because maybe you know you've let God down, or maybe it feels like God is letting you down and you thought God was looking and watching, but sometimes you feel like He doesn't see you, well, then your spirit is broken. And if you're wise, in verse 14, you'll devour more and more knowledge, so you can be even more pleasing to God, whereas fools, they devour more and more folly. And the awesome thing is, when you have a right relationship with God and you have a proper fear of Him, then even when you are afflicted and your days are terrible, verse 15, you can have a cheerful heart, knowing that you're making your Father in heaven proud because He's looking on in support and encouragement so that you can have strength to keep going in those difficult times. And even if you don't have much in life, verse 16, as long as you know you're pleasing the Lord and fearing Him, you can be content with what you have. Whereas wicked people can have great treasures and yet have no peace or contentment. So the challenge for us is to live with the realization that God sees everything we do. It's been said that your real character is revealed by who you are when no one is watching. And that's certainly true, but God is always watching. When David sinned with Bathsheba, he thought he got away with it because no one was around to see what he did. And yet in 2 Samuel 11 and verse 26, it says, "But the thing that David had done was evil in the sight of the Lord." Back in the 1800s, a man named Jeremy Bentham invented a prison design called a panopticon, which is a cylindrical building with prison cells arranged around a central watchtower. And the watchtower was covered in mirrored glass, so prisoners had no idea if they were being watched or not. And the brilliant thing was, all they needed was one prison guard to keep watch over all of the cells. Why? Because no one at any particular time could tell whether that prison guard was watching them or not. It was always a possibility that they were being looked at, and it actually helped promote better behavior among the prisoners. And of course, that worked for them just on the possibility of being seen. But for us, we know we actually are being watched by God at every moment. He is always looking. So it's absolutely impossible to ever get away with evil, even if no other human being sees us. But then, of course, there's the positive aspect. Knowing that God is always watching means He sees what we're going through, and He sympathizes with and understands our pain on a deep level. He sees us crying ourselves to sleep at night when our hearts are sad, and He also sees when we do good for Him, and it pleases Him to watch His children succeed in this world, living according to His word. And so the eyes of the Lord being upon us is both terrifying and comforting at the same time. And this points to Christ, who always lived in light of the fact that His Father was looking upon Him. Jesus knew His Father saw everything that He did, and He lived accordingly. Not only that, but Jesus Himself had a level of omniscience, even in the flesh, that was kind of scary for people. So when the disciples were having a private conversation about who was going to be the greatest in the kingdom, it was as if Jesus saw them having that conversation in private. And He asked them, "Hey, what were you guys talking about back there?" And of course, they were terrified to tell Him, but He already knew because He saw it. And He would so often read people's minds and hearts so that they didn't even have to say anything out loud. He knew exactly what they were thinking and feeling. And so there was a terrifying aspect to that, where Jesus was holding people accountable for what they were saying and doing in secret. But then there was a comforting aspect too, where He would know when one of His disciples was troubled, like Peter in John 13, when He tells him, "You're going to deny me 3 times. He could tell Peter was bothered by this, but He said in John 14:1, "Do not let your heart be troubled. Believe in God, believe also in me." And in John 1, when Nathanael came to Jesus for the first time, Jesus told him, "Before Philip called you, when you were under the fig tree, I saw you. So as we call upon God for wisdom, our prayer today is, Father, help me remember you see everything that I say and do. Help me live with the knowledge that you are looking. Lord, help me to have a cheerful face from a joyful heart that knows you are pleased by the heart you see in me, not because of my perfect righteousness, but because I trust in your Son for his.